Welcome to the Behind the Girl Boss podcast, where every woman's journey takes center stage. Join us in this safe space as we explore the ins and outs of business, career, mental health, the music industry, and more. Whether you're a go-getter or a dream chaser, we've got stories for you. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok for an exclusive backstage pass. Get ready to be inspired, empowered, and entertained. Welcome to the ride. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to the podcast. Hello, hi. I hope you are having an amazing week. It's April, as we know, and I'm in a weird transition in my life right now. I don't think I'm going to speak about it for a little while, but just going through life and its motions and just figuring things out. But yeah, I turned 26 in fucking like 20 days or something. I don't even know, like 18 days. And that's something that I'm also trying to like process. And not that I'm like, it's so weird, guys, because when I think of other people's age and I'm like, oh my God, they're only 26, like that's so young. But then when I think of it in my perspective and like my life, I'm like, holy shit, like I'm 26. Which like in retrospect, it's not even that old, but like in my head, it's old. Anyways, that's like something that I'm going to talk about in another episode. I'm going to do a solo episode for my birthday week. So just stay tuned for a lot of stress in that episode, but yeah, that's where my head's at right now. Before we get into today's episode, I'm going to do a little mantra of the week. And today's mantra is I take good care of myself without feeling guilty about it. I feel like sometimes when I prioritize myself or my own well-being or my own mental health or whatever it may be, sometimes I'm like, shit, like should I be focusing on other people? Like, why am I important? Blah, blah, blah. Like, I just sometimes don't know how to like put myself first or like feel good about putting myself first. So I saw this and I was like, I really resonate with it. And I think other people will too. So I take good care of myself without feeling guilty about it. Love it. I'm very excited for today's episode. I think it's a really good one and it was a really fun and insightful conversation. And I think you guys will enjoy it as well. Today on the podcast, we had Shania. Shania is a entrepreneur and she's the creator of the Do It All Girl. She is a PhD candidate, two-time founder and wellness researcher. We spoke all about what it's like being a creator online. We spoke about what it's like being a wellness researcher. We spoke about what it's like being an author. And we also spoke about her nonprofit that she co-founded with her sister called the Canadian Courage Project. It's based in Toronto and its mission is to support youth facing homelessness and their animal companions. I really enjoyed this conversation and Shania is just a force to be reckoned with and I really love her content and the messages that she shares. So if you're interested in anything that I just said, continue listening to the episode and I'll talk to you soon. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to the podcast. Today we have another guest with us. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Hi, I am Shania Bhopa. I am co-founder of the Canadian Courage Project, a national NGO in Canada. I am a PhD candidate in my last year. I am a children's book author, angel investor, and overall founder.
I love that. So many things under your belt. I like to start my podcast off by a little hot seat segment to kind of just break the ice and know little fun facts. So you currently live in Toronto right now. But if you could pick up and move anywhere, where would it be?
Los Angeles.
Yeah, I love it there.
It's just warm, everyone's inspired, and I feel alive.
No, same. Everyone was talking about today, like how spring is coming and everything. And I live in Montreal and it was snowing. And I was like, I'm over it.
Yeah, it's been so gray here that I just am so waiting for just blue skies and sun.
No, same. The next one is, do you have a life mantra or motto that you live by?
Mm, I would say the world is your classroom. I posted a reel about this the other day, actually yesterday, and my parents raised me to remember that textbooks are important, going to school is very important, but you will learn more from collaboration outside of the classroom, conversations that you have with strangers, and just learning in work environments outside of school.
Right.
And so just absorbing everything in the world, you'll be super well-rounded.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then the last one is, who's a celebrity or creator that always keeps you inspired?
Probably Allegra Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
Allegra Shaw, she's been a content creator and founder for so long, and I just think she is probably one of the most authentic, quote unquote, influencers I've ever met in
Yeah.
person and just online. She's super real, super raw, and you can just tell she means well.
No, I agree. And going off of the influencer life and sharing your life online, as someone who does share a lot of their life online, what is something that you do for fun for yourself that many people may not know that you actually do?
I eat chips every day.
Is there a certain type?
Love just a little, I call it my little crunch. Like I have a little bit of crunch at like my
Hmm.
dinner time or like my lunches. I love Doritos.
Okay.
I love all chips. I do not discriminate.
I love that. I never had that as a little fun fact, but I love that. Um, but growing up, did you always see yourself being in the wellness space, or did you have a whole different like path in mind?
So I grew up a really sick child
Okay.
in and out of hospitals my whole life. And so that informed why I cared so much about my own health, but also the health of other kids. And so that led to me being 7 years old. I started a sign language choir because so many of my peers were not in speaking folks. I started like a wellness shot company at like 8 years old, and I would sell like little vitamin C, vitamin D shots to moms in the neighborhood. I, always was so passionate about science. So I was in a science TV show growing up.
Okay.
And so just the world of science, community, and communication was just an intersection that I've always been super interested in. And I'm so lucky to have made a career out of it.
Yeah. And what specific aspects of wellness are you currently focusing on for your research and why are they important?
Yep. So my PhD is on co-design and community-based research to essentially build interventions, healthy, active living interventions for newly immigrated children and families. And so what that all means is type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease and obesity are just on the rise, and especially for folks who are newcomers. And so how can we co-develop healthy, active living interventions to reduce the risk and
Mhm.
essentially create for a healthier, happier world? And so, healthy active living is essentially anything under the umbrella of learning and activity. So, whether that be nutrition workshops in combination with fitness classes, in combination with um, parent and child classes, like those are all essentially uh, integratable interventions that families can partake in together to optimize their
Mhm.
health. And so, very broad, but just like wellness overall.
Okay, yeah. And have you encountered any like challenges while doing your research and how do you kind of navigate that?
So I would say number one is if you are a founder, if you're someone who's building something, co-designing it with your end user will improve the success and uptake, point blank. And number two is it's very difficult to co-design and rigorously co-design an intervention with newcomer populations because they have a number of barriers and a number of things that they are working through in their transition. And so having that trust with the community is very difficult, but very rewarding and
Mm.
makes for such a beautiful intervention.
Yeah. And if anyone's listening to this right now and they're interested in pursuing a PhD in the same type of field, what advice would you give to them?
Don't do a PhD. No, I'm kidding. I mean, do a PhD. You secured financial, scholarships or grants prior to applying, or you understand the risk of applying and not having those under your belt.
Hmm.
And number two is if you see yourself in academia or in academia in the future, or research is going to aid you in your career trajectory, I think it's very natural for people to just have this pipeline of undergrad, a master's, and a PhD. And I think that there's so much meaning and meaningful experiences that can happen outside of academia that might better serve you both income wise and purpose.
Yeah. And also as a PhD candidate, what are some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned so far throughout your research that like you didn't know before?
The most valuable lessons through my research. Number one, that I did know this, but I didn't know it to this degree. Women and young girls, the drop-off rate for girls in sports at puberty is so high, and especially amongst newcomer folks. And so, how can we get more girls encouraged to be in sports? And especially if that's not within your family unit to be popular or something that's cool, really push the boundaries on what you can do as a woman and empower those around you. Number two is we are in a type 2 diabetes epidemic. Like we are seeing young kids that are 10 years old come into the hospital presenting with adult onset type 2 diabetes, and like the symptoms are off the walls. And so how can we ensure that the kids in our community have access to nutritious foods, have access to nutrition education? Like
Mhm.
health literacy is so critical to your livelihood, and being able to decipher between misinformation and not is one of the most important skills that will aid you in this digital world. And so, really thinking about that.
Yeah, I love both of those, especially for sports. For example, I've played sports like soccer like almost my whole life. And then I stopped playing at a certain age because I was like, okay, like no one else is playing that's like a girl. It's always guys that are like going professional or whatever. And then recently this year I started playing again because I was like, you know what? Like who tells me I can't play like a sport, whatever. So I like that you mentioned that. Then also like nutrition. Growing up, like I knew nothing about nutrition and I had to find it all myself. And even like going that course when it's not like handed to you or like taught to you, sometimes you find really negative and like bad things while you're researching nutrition. So I think, yeah, it definitely has to be spoken about more in like school environments and everything.
Exactly. And I think it's something that we're opening our eyes to, and we're very lucky to be in the digital world.
For sure. So you spoke about how you're the co-founder of Canadian Courage Project. Can you share a little bit about the story behind this?
Mm. Yeah, so me and my sister, my little sister and I worked in shelters and animal shelters specifically for a very long time. And we saw this gap between the resources that were accessible to the folks, aka youth, who were surrendering many of their animals. And we realized that there was absolutely no nonprofit or charity in Canada that supported youth and their animals who are facing homelessness, facing precarious living, facing any structural vulnerability. And so oftentimes there are very few animal friendly shelters. And essentially, many young people have to surrender their pets because they can't bring them into the shelters. They have to choose, their livelihood over their pets. And so that is a very difficult scenario. And so we built essentially a partnership with over, I think now 30 organizations across Ontario, across Canada, where we essentially build animal wellness booths that offer everything from, your hygiene items to like subsidized vaccinations to veterinary care, everything that you could need so that the shelter is more willing to accept pets,
Yeah.
but also youth can have their companion. And in addition to that, we have mental health workshops across Canada as well. And we have a beautiful team. I'm very grateful to be working in this space.
Yeah, for sure. And how do you start like a nonprofit? What are the like steps that you have to take?
Very similar to a regular company.
Okay.
So incorporate A, researching the gap, B, incorporating, making sure your tax documents are all in check, and C, fundraising. So for a for-profit, you would essentially fundraise with investors. For a nonprofit, you fundraise through grants and government programming. So very exactly, essentially the exact same formula, just different pathways.
Yeah. And working with a sibling, is it ever hard? Do you ever like butt heads sometimes? And how do you navigate that?
Honestly, we don't. We
Okay,
don't
that's good.
butt heads. Is she's probably the smartest 19-year-old I've ever met in my life. Like we started this when she was 15,
Wow.
and she is just a genius. And so I have skills that she doesn't, and she has skills that I don't. And so having those complementary skills was super important for us.
hmm
And I don't think I could ever start another company without her.
I love that. And as a co-founder, what have been some of the most rewarding aspects of your involvement been?
My team. I absolutely adore every single member of the Canadian Courage Project. all our partners that have collaborated with us. I think that pure joy really just comes from working with others towards a greater mission. And I am so forever grateful for the
Mhm.
team.
Yeah, and what role do you see your business playing in advocating for policy changes in Toronto specifically right now?
Yep, a few of our members of the team regularly attend council meetings and are regularly voicing for the issues that are currently surrounding, youth accessibility to resources. And so we are actively playing a role in sitting at the table. So things with, unfortunately, policy and policy being put into practice takes so long,
Yeah.
government wise, just like the timeline. And so just being patient and working with folks.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I do think it's a big issue, especially after COVID. I feel like I've seen so many more homeless people. And it's so sad because like in my head, obviously I'm sure there's things going on behind the scenes, but I don't physically see like the government or anyone really helping them. I feel like they're always focusing on things that don't need to be focused on at the moment. So I love like hearing about these stories and like people like you actively helping because I feel like there's a huge, I don't know, like missing thing for it.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes that we don't
Hmm.
always hear on the news.
Yeah,
And so taking that extra step, researching, talking to your local government officials, and having those conversations is forever important.
100%. So if anyone's listening to this now and they want to get involved or support the work of the Canadian Courage Project, what can they do?
Feel free to TM us on Instagram or send us an email. We usually post our hiring or our recruitment on our social media, and so follow us there.
Yeah. And I obviously found you through social media and you do have a big growing platform. What made you want to start sharing about your business, about your research, about all of that online? And yeah, what motivated you to start this?
It actually started when I was wanting to write a book.
Okay.
And so originally I was writing a book with my mom and my sister called The Do It All Girl, like wellness tips for the Do It All Girl, because, and this was back in like 2020. And my sister's a doctor, my mom's a naturopath. And so I grew up with just so much wellness information at the tips of my fingers that I think every girl needs like a manual on how investing in
Hmm.
wellness is actually an investment into your grades and your business. And so that's how that started. I Googled what do authors do? And when I Googled, I saw that, start a blog. If you're an author, start a blog. And so I just started an Instagram page. And so the Do It All Girl book actually was tabled. And I was like, I'm gonna actually save this for when we have an audience, if we ever have an audience.
Hmm.
And I wrote in the book, there was an analogy called Girk the Gut and Bianca the Brain. And that's where the children's book came out of. And I ended up writing Girk the Gut and Bianca the Brain, a story about the gut brain connection, and just genuinely like did not think anything of it, just shared my progress, like, okay, writing the book day 14, like. And I didn't realize that there was such a gap for girls who looked like me and were in my position who have always dreamt of writing a children's book, or and I was writing a children's book when I was in my master's. And that's how it started. I just authentically shared. And before this, I had a photography business, a photography, graphic design. I did weddings and babies, and that's actually how I started on Instagram back in like 2016. I had a
Okay.
business. And so I've always seen social media as a tool. I've never really been like a personal blog, it's
Yeah.
just a tool to share X.
Yeah. And when did you start seeing like a big growth? Like, did you have a viral video or was it really gradual?
I think it's been gradual. I only really started like focusing um, in like 2021, 2022.
Okay.
So I'm still really new to it.
Hmm.
And honestly, I think it's just being genuine and authentic and sharing helpful information
Yeah.
and hoping that it resonates.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think authenticity is like the biggest thing right now because there's so many creators that just come off not as genuine and like I don't know. I feel like for myself when I follow people, I always look for people that one look like me and two I can relate to in some aspect and I feel like that is like becoming more prominent now.
Mm. I also, to be honest, I don't love this idea too, where we're pushing people to try to be coaches or make money off social media too, which like I think social media is such a beautiful place. And I just feel like at least on my TikTok timeline, all I see are like people on like people being like, you should buy my course or like you should do this. And I'm just like, I miss the days when there was like none of that.
Yeah.
And it's just fun.
Yeah, I just want to see fun content sometimes because I feel like sometimes I just get so consumed online and then like when I see all things like that, I'm like, "Oh my God, like should I be doing something else to like make money in some aspect?" And then I get like sucked into this thing because I do work on social media and I run my own business and like seeing all that all the time, I kind of question what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. You question yourself. And
Yeah.
you start to get in your head.
Yeah, 100%. So obviously you have so many things going on with school, with life in general. How do you balance everything?
That's why I invented the Do It All Girl community. Um, Amanda, yeah, it's uh, backstory. I used to get burnt out all the time. And
Hmm.
I've always been multifaceted ever since I was a kid. And 13 months ago, I said, Shania, I'm going to dedicate the next 13 months to test every scientific, evidence-based method to be efficient with my time. Because really, it's a time issue, not a
Hmm.
me issue. And it's a me managing my time poorly. And so I tested everything possible, and I haven't been burned out in 13 months. And I share all the tools and all the templates and all the tips on my channels and in my mailer. And I just think that women can do it all. You can do it all at the same time. You just need tools, systems, and a supportive community, and you
Hmm.
can truly achieve anything. Really know that, if you have no tool in your toolkit to manage your time, test them all out. Test them all out. Hate some of them, love the others. Google Calendar, my to-do list, triaging my tasks, like really prioritizing all the things I do on a daily basis. Those are really the secrets to quote unquote balancing.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard, but I agree with you. Like if I don't have a Google Calendar, if I don't have like a to-do list, like my brain's
I'm
not
done.
there.
It's
Yeah.
over.
Yeah. No, like I don't even remember what I'm supposed to do. So I'm very like that too. So the last part of my podcast, I asked people on Instagram to ask you questions. So I picked two. The first one is, what are some of your best study tips?
Hmm. Tip number one is being around people who have similar goals.
Yeah.
So I know this one's a little bit odd as a first tip, but like going to in the library that was at my school in undergrad, there was 6 floors, and the top floor was like the quiet, like you do not speak on that floor, like super dead silent, but everyone's grinding. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I needed to get stuff done, I was on 6th floor, like don't bother me, that's where I'm staying. And I would time block my day based on the most efficient times I was efficient. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, I'm most efficient from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. So my deep work is always 6 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Okay.
I will very rarely schedule unimportant tasks between that time period. So that's number one. Number two is test, fail, and understand which study methods work for you. For some people, they like to use Decky.ai, which is like Anki flashcards. It's spaced repetition, AI driven, and that's how people work. Some people like to write things down over and over, some like to talk. So you really need to understand yourself and understand your study style before you can like strive for excellence.
Mm-hmm.
I now study less in terms of time than I've ever studied, but I'm more efficient because I know what method works.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like hard. Like for me, when I was in school, I never like knew what worked for me and I tried everything and then I finally found it a little late, but I found it in the end. But yeah, I think like knowing yourself and knowing what helps information stick best for you.
Mhm.
And then the last question is, what do you hope people feel when consuming your content?
I hope they feel empowered.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they feel, thinking about my younger self, like I wished she saw someone like me online.
Yeah.
I want women to feel empowered that they can do it all. I want women to feel empowered with the tools that I share with them and the tips, that those are all tools now in their toolkit.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us start with zero in our toolkit. And I hope if there's anything I can offer one.
Yeah. I love that. Well, that's all I have for you today. So thank you so much again for coming on. Before you leave, do you want to shout out any of your socials where people can find you, where they can follow your journey?
Yes, if you would like to follow along, follow me at Well by Shania on TikTok and Instagram. I also started YouTube, so at Well by Shania there as well. And then the Do It All Girl mailer linked on my socials.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I really do hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to go follow Shania on all her socials. Go show her some love, support. If you want to follow me, please don't be shy. You can follow me either at Behind the Girl Boss or at It's Amanda Wan. Check out my YouTube channel, It's Amanda Wan. I'm posting again. Finally, haven't posted other than the podcast in a little minute. So we're going to be back on YouTube soon. And yeah, thank you guys again for listening. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye, guys.